Hello, everyone. We are live today. Good afternoon. We hope you are well, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on tectonic metals. My name is Jacob Willoughby, and I'm a Vice President of Research and Analyst at Red Cloud Securities Incorporated. Joining me remotely today are Tony Reda, President and CEO, and Bill Stormont, Manager of Investor Relations for Tectonic Metals. We'll begin today's webinar with a presentation on the company by Tony and Bill, followed by a question and answer period. As a reminder, you can type in your questions at any time, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Before we begin, I'd like to note that there may be some forward-looking statements made in this webinar. I would direct listeners to the cautionary notes on page 2 of Tectonic's corporate presentation, which you can find on their website. For Red Cloud Securities Incorporated, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. Should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. Also, we note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Company-specific disclosures for Red Cloud are the following. In the last 12 months preceding the date of issuance of the research report or recommendation, Red Cloud Securities Inc. and the issuer have entered into a service and/or advisory agreement. And in the last 12 months preceding the date of the issuance of the research report or recommendation, the analyst has been compensated for investment banking services by the issuer. And now I'm very happy to introduce you to Tony Reda, President and CEO, and Bill Stormont, Manager of Investor Relations of Tectonic Metals.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Red Cloud, for allowing us to present here today, and thank you, everyone online here, for taking time out of their schedules to allow us to tell you a bit more about Tectonic Metals Inc. Once again, my name is Tony Reda. I'm President, CEO, Director, and also a founder of Tectonic Metals Inc. With me today is our newly appointed Bill Stormont, Investor Relations for Tectonic. We do trade on the TSX Venture under the symbol TECT, and we also have a new OTCQB listing where the symbol is TETOF. We're at a very interesting point right now because we're literally in the field as we speak. Drills are turning. I'll talk about 2 drill programs that were just unleashed this summer. We are pretty excited about the targets that we're testing and eagerly are awaiting results. So I'll tell you a bit more about Tectonic Metals and potentially some catalysts that are going to be unfolding in the weeks and months to come, and also perhaps a bit of background to those of you who are not familiar with Tectonic Metals Inc. A shift in the game. What is that all about? Well, Kaminak was acquired in 2016. That's Kaminak Gold Corporation by Goldcorp for $520 million. A lot of the key executives from Kaminak banded together and said, what do we want to do? And the common theme amongst the founders was that we wanted to bring something different to the exploration game or to the junior mining space. Well, what does different look like? Well, the shift embodies those differentiating factors that makes Tectonic, I think, stand out from the crowd. So from everything that we do, from building a company around a team, actually having a business model, engaging with the First Nations early on, taking the risk or managing the risk right from the get-go. Let's try to overcome those hurdles as soon as possible so we can try to make this more streamlined and more like a business. Cash flow, we don't have any, so you're always tied to raising capital and watching your pennies. Where we allocate that capital is extremely important. We exercise a lot of discipline, and we try to sort of pluck the low-hanging fruit with our projects and advance them as quickly as possible. The First Nations is a critical component to the shift in the game. Also, like I said, our team, there's members of our team that are, I think, unique and probably at a much higher level than what Tectonic's all about. So we'll get into those supporting slides for that thesis. But the backdrop that I'd like everyone to take away is that perhaps this company actually is trying to do something different. Similar to what Jacob alluded to earlier, this is our forward-looking statement and National Instrument 43-101 compliance slide. Obviously, I do not expect you to read it at this moment in time, but please take the time to read it before making any investment decision in our company. It is located on our website, www.tectonicmetals.com. With that being said, I'd like to actually now pass the mic, if you will, to Bill Stormont, IR for Tectonic Metals, and allow him to introduce himself and speak a bit to the upcoming slides here. Over to you, Bill.
Thanks, Tony, and thank you very much. I joined Tectonic about 3 weeks ago. It's been a very fast learning curve and a great team to work with. So I've been made very welcome, and really looking forward to growing with the team. As Tony mentioned, Tectonic Metals is really built on a formula for success that the company's founders blueprinted with Camanachd Gold Corporation. Management has significant skin in the game, very well aligned with shareholders with around 30% of shares outstanding held by management. And we're focused on building a company for the long run. Tony mentioned having a business plan. We're really investing in assets with strong risk-reward characteristics. And we're also investing in long-term relationships. And in this case, local partnerships alongside Alaska's largest landholder and our largest shareholder, Joyon Limited, which is a native regional corporation in Alaska and one of the state's largest. We've got a strong treasury. We've got a fully funded drilling program. And right now we're really focused on discovery. We often describe ourselves as a company built around a team, and it's really no secret that one of Tectonic's major strengths is that the team consists of key people behind Camanachd Gold Corporation, as we've mentioned. Many of the faces that you see here, they played a pivotal role in raising $165 million to fund the acquisition, discovery, and advancement of the Coffee Gold Project, all the way through to sale for $520 million to Goldcorp, as Tony said. So when you're backing Tectonic, you're investing alongside a very experienced technical and financial team with a demonstrable track record of wealth creation and delivering value for shareholders over the long term. And finally, just before handing over to Tony, I wanted to touch on our capital structure and capital management. Our recent $4.9 million offer was oversubscribed. The proceeds for that will be going towards our Tibbs Gold Project and our 70 Mile Gold Project, which Tony will be talking in more detail about, and also for general working capital purposes. Our cash position, as you can see here, is just about $7 million. And the meaning of that and the importance of that is that our drilling program is fully funded for the year. And that's an important fact. We really take pride in our focus on details, and we really focus on this risk versus reward versus cost of capital when determining the next steps in our process. And I think this focus is key. All of our projects have a defined 3-year plan, annual deliverables, and we're focused on achieving results. And with that, I'll let Tony talk in a bit more detail about how we're focused on that and how we're moving forward.
Thank you, Bill. And I would like to remind everyone that there is a Q&A section at the end here, and you can obviously type in your questions as they pop up in your mind, and we'll do our best to address them at the end of the presentation. So the first project that just recently we completed drilling on is called our Tibbs Gold Project. It's 35 kilometers from the operating high-grade gold Pogo mine. When I say high-grade, the average head grade there is north of 10 grams per ton gold. It's been in production for quite some time. Northern Star Resources, an ASX listed company, is the current owner of the mine. You can see them highlighted here in purple. Yes, they've acquired ground right next to our Tibbs property, and which I believe they're going to be active on as well. When we look at de-risking a project, well, one of the biggest hurdles is infrastructure, energy, power. You can see that, obviously being close to a mine, there's a full operating mill there that is actually needs more throughput. We have a a relatively close highway and road system and power right to the Pogo mine. Now, looking at Tibbs proper, this is the outline of our property position as it stands right now. This property was actually discovered back in the mid-90s by Sumitomo, the original operators, the original discoverers and operators of the Pogo mine. The reason why they explored this property is that it shares many similarities geochemically and structurally to the mineralization observed at the Pogo mine. What drew us into acquiring this property was A, yes, it's very similar or akin to Pogo, but B, there was a lot of untested golden soil anomalies, rock anomalies, and we know from our Yukon experience that sometimes shovel samples, so taking a shovel sample of soil, is not always the best tool to delineate bedrock mineralization. We prefer to use a much deeper tool that can get through some of that permafrost or organic material into that sea level horizon. So we knew if we applied some new tools to get deeper, we can potentially highlight some zones that were previously benign. We acquired this in the summer of 2017, and since then we were successful in delineating new soil anomalies, new rock anomalies, so that's surface rock anomalies, trench anomalies, and then last year we executed our first ever drill program on this property, and we made 3 drill discoveries highlighted in gold there. What you will also see is that half of the property hasn't even been systematically explored. So one of the focuses this year was, okay, let's go after Michigan, 6 grams over 29 meters. That was one fence of holes, and the subsequent slide speaks to that. But let's also continue to drive the pipeline for drill opportunities on this project. Let's keep it healthy and active. Yes, there's some existing targets that we want to test, but at the same time, let's continue to use our tools that we used at the Coffee Gold Project, soil sampling, for instance, and extend the soil grid. So part of the program this year was to expand the Michigan zone, test upper and lower trench, that's drill test Wolverine, which is the largest, most robust gold and soil anomaly on the property. And then let's also collect more soils to tackle some of the other prospective ground on this property. We've drilled 3,000 meters in over a month. It was RAB drilling, and we are now, we've sent drill chips, RAB chips, to the lab, and we are eagerly awaiting assay results. Now, jumping into the targets themselves that got drill tested, we're looking at our Michigan zone here. So what you see in light pink is an area we're calling a deformation zone or a mineralized corridor. It's bounded by these north-northeast lineaments highlighted with a red dashed line. You can see here I'm actually just going to turn on this. You can see our 4 drill holes right here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we did 1 fence. What we were targeting was some rock anomalies, high-grade gold rock anomalies at surface. Our 2018 trench result of 11.5 grams over 3.3 meters, that was open. The trench actually ended in mineralization. We also have these 3 historical holes drilled by a junior mining company in 2011. This was not Sumitomo drilling. Sumitomo didn't drill this area. What they did do is they trenched, and that's the Stoneboy joint venture, which comprised of Sumitomo, Teck, and WGM. They actually observed the mineralization in the trench and annotated it on a map 72 degrees to the northwest, which is contradictory to where this junior drilled in 2011. So based on our interpretation analysis and that trench map, we drilled these 4 holes. We were targeting the mineralization projected below the trench, and also using this ROB 1102 historical 2011 drill hole, where they intersected 57 grams per ton at the top of the hole, midway 7 grams over 3.5, and 2.58 grams per ton at the bottom of the hole over 9 meters. Now that actually ended in mineralization. So we do have evidence to support that this does continue. We also have these high-grade rock anomalies here, 989 grams, 172 grams. And when we apply the structural orientation of our drill intercept to these historical holes, it appears that they potentially missed what was happening below. So I'm just going to turn this off here. Here's our drill section. Keep in mind 4 holes. They're about 50 meters spaced apart. The bulk of the mineralization was hit here, relatively close to surface. And then we've interpreted this M1 structure to be the primary unit hosting this mineralization. We have golden structures. We see golden veins. This high-grade interval is carried by not just one high-grade interval, but other multiple intervals within it, 9 grams over 3, 14 over 1, 35 over 1.5. What also gives us confidence that this thing has legs is that historical drill hole, so this is 30 meters to the northeast, they intersected that 2.6 grams over 9 meters, 250 meters below surface. So we know this has depth extent. We'll be targeting this year primarily high-grade mineralization close to the surface, and we'll be stepping out along strike, trying to define the geometry and the scale of this of last year's discovery. In addition to Michigan, we've drilled actually lower trench and upper trench, which we actually believe to be one unified zone, if you will. And then also Wolverine got tested. Now the rationale for drilling these zones was that last year we did a lineament analysis, and obviously we collected more soils and more rock samples. And what we uncovered is that these 3 zones were once connected in a 3-kilometer long north-northeast trending structure, and they were offset right here, shown by this black line and this interpreted black dash line here. So the DNA of all these zones is identical. It differs from the southern half of the property. And we look at our upper trench discovery, 0.5 over 12. Well, we have rock samples. Remember, this is an unglaciated terrain where we've been able to grab 135 grams per ton. That's one of the highest, but each purple triangle is greater than 5 grams per ton. So a lot of high-grade gold at surface. We think we're just scratched. This was the last hole of the season. So we do think we were just scratching the surface. We think there's more potential, and we do think that these were once connected. And again, when we apply the structural orientation and the dip of our M1 discovery to these zones, this drilling did not properly intersect or explain the mineralization observed at surface. At Wolverine, this is a saddle here, this is a saddle, and this is a saddle, again, once connected, but the soil anomalies that were taken by shovel appear to have creeped off of the ridge top. We went in there with our power auger soil sampling tool, which gets deeper in the profile, and we're now lighting up just beyond the ridge top here. So what we've done this year is we've done offensive holes along the ridge top to target the bedrock source of that soil mineralization. So in total, 3,000 meters drilled, primarily focused on Michigan, then upper and lower trench and Wolverine. We have roughly there 4 drilled targets, if you will, and we've completed 3,000 meters on those. We also are anticipating some additional soil anomalies and rock anomalies from our soil sampling and prospecting campaign. Moving on to the next drill program, which is currently underway. It's on our 70-mile gold project, again, located in Alaska. What intrigued us about this asset is a few different things. So one of our initiatives was to work with the native corporations in Alaska. They actually, more often than not, they own the subsurface and surface mineral rights. When you're working on native land, you primarily work directly with them. So it is a much more streamlined process. So as part of our endeavor to approach and work with them, we approached a native group called Doyon Limited. They're, like, as Bill mentioned, they're one of the largest native corporations in Alaska. Their land was primarily selected based on mineral prospectivity. The amount of land that they hold is about 12.5 million acres. It's about the size of France. And so there's no shortage of opportunity or land to cover. And when we built this relationship, one of the assets that we quickly jumped on was 70 Mile. The reason being is that A, it's a greenstone belt. It was sitting dormant for 20 years. If you're trying to find a district scale gold system, well, greenstone belts are the place to look. And having one in a tier 1 jurisdiction, or i.e. in North America, that still hasn't been fully explored is extremely rare. In addition to that, we have soil anomalies, again, taken by shovel. So we know there's an opportunity there to get deeper with our new tools. But we have significant soil anomalies. And remember, this flume trend that's 8 kilometers long, guess what? It started out as a spot anomaly on a ridge. This is very similar to how the Coffee Gold Project was discovered. In order to tackle a large area of land, you do ridge and spur soil sampling. When you get a hit, you flush it out with a grid of soils. Well, they did that. And these spot anomalies have potential to become similar to the flume trend. That's how this all started. So we have soil anomalies here defined untested. We have spot anomalies on a regional level. We have more anomalies down in this corner here. This property is 40 kilometers long, 150,000 acres. So one of the things that we look for grade. We look for opportunities where we can work with like-minded native corporations. And we look for scale. You know, we hear it, whether it's Barrick or Newmont, pick your miner of choice. Everybody wants scale these days. Well, big deposits leave big footprints, and you need structures. You need large regional structures to yield those 10 million ounce plus systems. So this project had a lot of the boxes already ticked for us. We also have some historical drilling at Flanders, 187 grams per ton over a meter, 12 over a meter and a half, 7.8 over 5 meters roughly. Okay, well, we know there's indications for grade. The other thing that jumped out at us when we're sifting through the historical reports is that the previous explorer, again 20 years prior to us touching foot on the ground here, they applied a California mother lode model, which again is a very relevant model and has obviously yielded a lot of mines. But we were looking at this project through a different lens, and that's through a high-grade shear zone model, which is highlighted in this this is a conceptual model. You would have Earth Sciences 101 at your university of choice. So what we believe the historical explorers were drilling were these extensional veins off of a major shear zone. We've actually looked at the drill core. It appears to be low angle, flat lying, and we believe that the main prize is this shear zone, which wasn't previously targeted. So, okay, with that in mind, we acquired this project in the summer of 2018. We said, okay, what are we going to do differently? A lot of juniors go back and just repeat what was done in the past and somehow expect a different outcome. So we targeted this shear zone and we said, let's bring in some new tools. So we brought in our Power Auger soil sampling tool. We did a modern day Midas Mag survey, geophysical survey. We also brought in a tool called a geoprobe, which is kind of like a hammer drill. It's a vertical push drill. It goes up to 40 feet deep. Wherever it hits that bedrock interface, it stops and collects a sample. Mapping and prospecting, the bread and butter of exploration, was also done, and that yielded some results as well. So in this slide here, slide 14, what you're seeing is about a 2K by 2K window of the 40-kilometer long property. This is all historical work. We can see the drill collars here, the circle black dots, and the drill traces shown in black. Now that drill trace never got to this rock contact here. So Tectonic is targeting that black dashed line between the green and the brown. We think that's the interpreted shear zone. Flanders here, when the more robust soil anomalies on the property are more prospective zones. The tension gash veins are carrying up to 187 grams per ton. So we had the spot anomaly right here, 325 parts per billion. Background, usually, things start to get interesting post or after 25 parts per billion. So this was kind of odd. We knew from the historical reports that this was a rich permafrost area. Again, shovel samples don't work that well in permafrost. So just because you see a dead, gray dot here, that symbolizes it's dead. We didn't necessarily trust that. So we went in with those 3 tools, and I'll show you what the after picture looks like. So there you go. I'll do that one more time. The before, so this was 1997, I believe, and now the after. So the red circles are highlighting our the bulk of our work. We actually did some down in here as well. But now what we've delineated along the shear zone is high-grade gold, rock anomalies, soil anomalies, top of bedrock anomalies, and the strike extent now proves that just because, again, we see a dead gray dot here, this is shovels, that this whole contact is now prospective. A contact is like a shear zone or a fault. It's basically where two rock types meet. And the shear zone is typically between the less competent rock and a more competent or higher competent rock. So we have a pretty sexy drill target right in here. The question we want to answer is, okay, is this the actual shear zone that's manifesting itself at surface, or the conduit responsible for these tension gash veins mineralization there? And then what is the scale and the grade of this anomaly? We also have another anomaly here called Deep Creek, which is on a different rock contact. This is 80 meters long, consisting of soil and top of bedrock mineralization. It is consistently mineralized. It's a fantastic anomaly. And then we have some down in here at East Flanders. So we think this whole contact is prospective. We are going to drill test Flanders here, East Flanders, and Deep Creek. So those are three of the targets. We'll be doing RAB drilling and offensive holes across that shear zone. We will then move the drill to about 4 kilometers away to three other zones, I should say. One is new that we discovered, but there's some low-hanging fruit here at this zone called Bonanza. So 1.34 grams over 44 meters. This is different style of mineralization than at Flanders, and this is on a different rock contact. But that was the last hole on this fence. Last year we did a top of bedrock sampling, and lo and behold, we've extended it on surface. So we'll be stepping out along strike on this historical 1997 drill hole, trying to extend it. We do think it gets thicker and beefier down in here. We've also targeted, we're targeting, I should say, the flume zone. Every hole here hit gold mineralization, 2.8 grams roughly over 7.3 meters was one of the highlights from this area here. We're going to be stepping out significantly, trying to expand this with our drill. Again, we believe this carries forward. We've traced the lineament, and it's game on. The other thing that we did last year was like, okay, if Flume is mineralized and Bonanza is mineralized, well, let's see, again, if our theory that this rock contact could be a host for mineralization, let's target the middle. We brought our new tools in, and lo and behold, we're delineating anomalies and high tenor anomalies in this area we're calling Flume Bonanza link. So 1, 2, 3 zones, 3 on the other zones. That's a total of 6. We'll get drill tested in the month of August into September, and we'll be eagerly awaiting results. We just launched this program late last week, and those are the 2 programs that we'll get drill tested this year. We do have other opportunities in the pipeline. We announced an acquisition of a project called Maple Leaf, which is also near Pogo. We've done a surface mapping, prospecting, rock soil sampling program on that one. We do expect some new projects to come into the pipeline. Stay tuned for assay results from now, probably right through till October. And as I mentioned, 2 projects getting drill tested. One is near an operating mine called Pogo. That's our Tibbs project is the one that's situated close to it. You're looking at our VPX there, crouching down, helicopter in the background, obviously. And the other drill program will be our 70-mile project, which is one of the few remaining greenstone belts in North America that we are excited to drill test this year. That is it for the presentation. We've tried to keep it concise and short, and really want to take advantage now of the Q&A component. So please feel free to ask away, and I'll pass the baton back to Jacob.
Great, Tony. And And Bill, thank you very much for that. So start off, it's interesting you mentioned your sort of corporate philosophy is a shift in the game, and there's already a few ways how Tectonic has shifted things. Not the least of which being going in first and doing the agreement with the peoples there, which is you've mentioned to me several times before. A lot of times companies leave that for the absolute last thing to do, and your group, I think, strategically and uniquely decided to do that as a first step. How did that get going?
Well, yeah, good question. It actually started out when I was with at Kamenak, and as VP Corporate Development, my job was to generate ideas, and I was impressed with one such opportunity. Like the Red Dog mine is situated on NANA is another Alaska Native Regional Corporation, and just my dealings with Kamenak when we moved into a uranium prospect in Nunavut, and we formed a landmark uranium partnership that I was lucky to spearheaded by our CEO Rob Carpenter, one of our founders. But I was inspired by that deal, going into the communities, witnessing some success with NANA and the Red Dog mine, which has just been pivotal to the economy over there. I was impressed with Alaska and how they structured their Alaska Native corporations there. They have a revenue sharing agreement called 7I, where they all benefit from the pros of mining. So it was a bunch of things that came together. It was also us trying to permit the coffee project and witnessing some other permitting delays in the Yukon, and say, okay, there's got to be a simpler way. And I specifically wanted to move into Alaska, which is why I also brought on Kurt Freeman, one of our founders. I call him Mr. Alaska. There is no public mineral database there. So having a guy like Kurt that lives and breathes the geology in Alaska, he resides there. I brought him on board, and we all started strategizing, the four founders, on there's an opportunity here, providing that the native corporations are pro-business, pro-mining, and they want guys like us, or people like us, I should say, exploring their land. Then why can't we work together? And why not do it at the forefront? These IBAs that get negotiated post-feasibility or part of the feasibility study, it just turns into, not always, but it turns into a bit of a rat's nest. And ultimately, this is their land. That's the way I view it. And why not introduce yourselves from the get-go and say, hey, do you want to work together? So the genesis started really from being inspired from a bunch of deals, and then just challenging the system, saying there has to be an easier way to do this. And when I walked into the office of Doyon Limited in Fairbanks, Alaska, Kurt, our Freeman, organized the meeting, and we walked in and we introduced ourselves, and they're like, okay, what are these guys all about? And the next thing we did, the four founders, Ira Thomas, myself, Rob Carpenter, Kurt Freeman, and Allison Rippon Armstrong, we flew to the local village, one of the local villages that is Doyon's the umbrella corporation, but this is a village, and we introduced ourselves to them. And that was an investment, and they were quite surprised that all four founders showed up, and we went into a village of 200 people and said, hey, this is what we're about. What do you think? What are your thoughts on mining, and would you like to be part of this? I don't think too many companies invest in that sort of due diligence. And right now the world is the junior investment world, I should say, is slowly waking up to the importance of early engagement. If someone came into my backyard, I got mad at my neighbor. The neighbor knocked down his house. A new person bought it, and no one even told me. All of a sudden, there's bulldozers, excavators, and I was annoyed. I was like, "What the hell's going on?" No one even told me that they were building. So I can only imagine in these small villages when they see helicopters or foreigners or whoever, strangers walking around, doing work on their ground, right? So I think it's the right way to go, and we take that very seriously, that early engagement, because the last thing I need is to derail a project on some risks that could have been mitigated at the get-go. I can't control Mother Nature, but the way I deal and work with the communities and the First Nations, that's under my control. And if it's a risk I control, then I better damn sure make sure I get it right.
Yeah, I think it's a unique as far as I know, but fantastic example of good ESG, which is increasingly a focus. You know, in the industry, we call it often like social license.
Yes.
And it takes a long time to get them and minutes to lose them.
Yes.
So
exactly.
I applaud Tectonic in how you did it. I think it was brilliant. And I think other companies are going to take note of it and you know, try to recreate the same kind of structure.
If I could just add to that too, I think that early engagement piece, there's always challenges in any kind of partnership. And when you start the way Tony has described, when they arise down the road, you've got that relationship, you've built that understanding, you know each other, you're speaking transparently and honestly with each other and engaging. And so you can work those things out in much less time than if you do it at a much later stage in the process. And I think that is, you know, in a business like ours where we want to get moving here, that makes all the difference in the world. Doing that up front and respecting that process is essential.
And sorry, I'm going to add one more thing, because that investment of going to Doyon Limited's office in Fairbanks and then going to a local village, I can't directly speak on their behalf, but that actually, yes, there was some positives that came out of from the local village we hired. They were inspired. Some opportunities came out: education, oral history, employment. But what also came out of there, which maybe this crowd might appreciate more, was a $2 million investment. Doyon stepped back and said, wow, these guys are actually doing business the right way. We want to be shareholders in their company. And so in the midst of the COVID crisis, right at the peak in about April this year, Doyon stepped up, paid a premium, and said, we want to be your largest shareholder. And you know, that was something that we've been talking about for a couple months, but I was extremely flattered and honored. And I must say, I can't speak on their behalf, but it came down to us hopping on that plane, going to a village of 200 people, Ira Thomas, myself, Rob Carpenter. You know, founders don't typically show up. And I think that resonated and rippled through. And, you know, you never know where a small gesture like that can actually pay you back in spades.
Yeah, absolutely. Another shift in the game, to use your corporate philosophy, is the founders paying and investing in the company, but doing so at the prices that the other shareholders are able to invest at, and in some cases higher. So I think we've discussed this before, but maybe you could tell us about the 29% ownership of insiders, what cost base those shares were actually done at.
Yeah, so it depends on who the team member is. Some of us, the founders, were in earlier. Our latest, or not our latest, probably late last year, or September last year, we went public. But we had two recent additions to the board, and that was Mel Benson stepping in as chair. You know, so his cost base, I'm going to venture to say, is probably in the 35 cent range. He started cutting checks at 35 cents, buying in the open market as well. He took part in this last financing, which was his lowest entry point as far as I'm aware of. So he has a higher cost base. You know, I was one of the founders. So in 2017, you know, my cost base is slightly lower than his, but I can tell you that, you know, my entire life savings is in this company. And for us, we don't have, like, I will say, Bill was granted some options recently when he joined the company, as, you know, part of as a method to incentivize him, which is very common in our industry. But aside from him, no one has any options. You know, we do have restricted shares that were issued as well, but those are tied to a 2-year timeline and tied to employment and performance metrics. But aside from that, you know, our upside is in our ownership. And, you know, if I could keep buying shares at 35 cents, I don't have the bank account that, you know, I think I can say that Mel or Ira has, but I definitely live and breathe this stock, and, you know, participate in the last round I didn't participate in this 20-cent round, but I participated in the 35-cent round before that. And so did Eric, our VPX, and Allison, our director, and Kurt as well. So our cost base are probably anywhere from, you know, 10 cents right through to 35 cents. But we've all, Ira, Mel, myself, we've participated in I've only missed one financing, but they have participated in every financing, continuing to support the stock. So, we're not looking at this as a one-trick pony. Again, like I said earlier, I can't control Mother Nature. Our job is to manage the process. And as Bill said to me earlier this week, the process dominates the outcome. So let's focus on what we control, try to do things right. We might strike out this go around. We might hit it big. If you recall Kaminak, we went public in 2005 and the discovery happened in 2010. We were taken out in 2016. It takes perseverance, tenacity, patience, and you just keep doing the right things, stepping up to the plate. Eventually you're gonna, we think eventually. You got to believe you can do it. And we believe that is the case. I don't work for any other company. This is it. This is what puts food on my table, and I will make it work. Right.
It's very novel. Founders and things not to have options in the company, but it rings very true with people that we've spoken to on the investor side. Another interesting part of the story here is the experience you had from Kaminak, in particular in soil sampling, and the difference that you highlighted in your presentation between the results that were done for you and the results you got, because you sort of through trial and error, pioneered your own way to do soil sampling in this part of the Yukon. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Tell some of the listeners about that side of the story.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Yukon, I do have to give props to Sean Ryan, who's a very well-known Yukon prospector. He's a lot of things, but a lot of good positive things. And he brought that property to us back in 2009, and his technique of, he uses it's like a tulip bulb, but his technique of going deeper, 1 or 2 soil horizons further down. Now, Coffee is situated near Casino, Western Copper's copper gold deposit there, and then Minto is about 100. Minto copper mine's about 100 clicks away. So that area was originally explored, I believe, given the success of Western Copper and Minto, looking for copper. But you take a shovel sample there, you even look at the soil, it's very benign. You get nothing. But what he did, and to his credit, is that he went deeper. And all of a sudden, things start lighting up. And so we took his work and just really blew it up. The first thing we did in 2009 is like, okay, we're going to collect, I can't even remember how many soil samples it was, to be honest. It's something like 10,000. We just blitzed the whole property. And all of a sudden, we're getting these anomalies showing up 5Ks, 2Ks away. And so that really, when we saw that property, we knew the Yukon, especially this part, was unglaciated. And soil sampling is not new. But the challenge is the glaciers have scraped the Earth's surface and transported it sometimes 10, 50, 100 kilometers away. And it's a hair-pulling exercise trying to trace that source. So we typically look in unglaciated terrains because there's also potential for oxide. You get that preservation, and it's also an easier exercise, typically speaking, to get below that. The last thing we want to do, and I see it all the time because I invest in companies as well, is that they get the project and they just go back and do the exact same thing. And so soil sampling, it was one tool, but I'm constantly pushing my team to come up with new and alternative ways and new thinking, even before we acquire that project. And again, to Sean Ryan's credit and Ground Truth, they came up with a relatively new tool called a geoprobe. They perfected this tool that actually now goes deeper. So soil sampling was one tool. The geoprobe is another one that's kind of unique and different, and I think, if I can't speak on White Gold's behalf, but they've been used that quite successfully to get deeper, because sometimes you have permafrost, and especially in northern jurisdictions, permafrost can be nasty to deal with. So you need to, again, trying to get that bedrock interface is super critical.
Right. Okay. There's a question from one participant online asking about how much geophysical surveying have you done at both the Tibbs and 70 Mile projects?
Sure. So we've done surveys at both. At Tibbs, we did a Digim survey, so MAG-EM geophysical survey. That was actually the first year we acquired it. And then at 70 Mile, we did I call it a modern day Midas mag survey, targeting that shear zone from one end of the property. It was 40 kilometers long. It wasn't cheap, but when you're dealing with large land positions, you're looking at a 30,000 foot level, you have to vector in. And we're looking for, geophysical anomalies that coincide with the mineralization and drilling, mineralization in soils and rocks, looking for structure, shear zones. So those are the two surveys we've done to date. We are contemplating a few more, but that's it for right now. Okay.
Maybe just one more question before we wrap up. And I apologize if you actually covered this at one point, but can you estimate for us when your drill results from at least the Tibbs property you'll have in hand and be able to press release some of the results from?
Definitely. So I'm not sure if this is a surprise to anyone or not, but with the increase in exploration or an increased excitement in the junior mining space as of late due to the gold price and whatever else, the labs are backed up, and then they're also facing COVID restrictions and COVID challenges with social distancing. So we are facing a delay. I would expect within the next 2 to 3 weeks at most, we should have our first set of assay results out to the market. When you get your drill assay results, you have to do QA, QC, so quality assurance, quality control. Some you have to send back to the lab. So I think we'd be looking at about 2 weeks, hopefully, maybe 3 at the very latest. And then there should be a trickle of results going forward right through into end of September, possibly early October.
Excellent. Well, we're very eagerly looking forward to seeing those results. And I'd like to thank you both for participating with us and making time for us, and also like to thank those attending through the internet. We have our next webinar is actually tomorrow at 2 p.m. with a company called First Vanadium, which is going to be hosted by our Managing Director of Research, Andrew Kipe. So we hope to see you all there. Thanks again, Tony and Bill, and to everyone, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Red Cloud.